The scent of chlorine and adolescent sweat hung heavy in the humid air of the Lincoln High School natatorium in Billings, Montana. A cacophony of splashing and shouted times echoing off the tiled walls as I stood on the block, my heart hammering against my ribs. The final heat of the 200-meter freestyle championship stretching before me. My parents in the bleachers just above my lane, my mother's face a tight mask of expectation, not for me, but for my younger brother, Jake, who had already won his butterfly event an hour before, his medal hanging around his neck as he lounged with his friends, the family's golden athlete. And as the starter's horn blared, I dove into the cool, blue sanctuary of the water, my arms slicing through with a rhythm born of 4 years of dawn practices. Every stroke a silent plea for a glance of approval, for a single shout of my name. And when my hand finally slammed into the wall, the electronic board flashing a first place time and a new school record, a gasp and then cheers erupted from the team's section. My coach jumping up and down, and I hauled myself out, breathless, searching the bleachers for their faces, only to see my mother already turned away, talking animatedly to another parent, pointing at Jake, and my father simply clapping politely. And the victory, which had felt so monumental seconds before, turned to ash in my mouth. But the true drowning came in the parking lot afterwards, under the harsh fluorescent lights, as we loaded our bags into the minivan, and my mother, finally addressing my win, said with a sigh as she buckled her seatbelt, "It's nice you have a little hobby, Maya, really, it keeps you fit. But all this time in the pool, for what? Swimming doesn't build a future. It doesn't pay for college like Jake's football prospects. You need to be realistic. Girls like you. You're not built for real pressure, for leadership. You'll never wear a uniform that matters, never have a title anyone respects. Your future is a quiet one, a nice, simple job, maybe marrying a local boy who doesn't mind a wife with no real ambition." The words, delivered not in a shout but in a calm, matter-of-fact dismissal, as if she were commenting on the weather, hit me with the force of a physical blow, the heat of the shower still on my skin, turning ice cold. My tears this time, not of exhaustion, but of a profound, gutting shame, mixing with the chlorinated water dripping from my hair, my emotional breakdown happening right there, in the front passenger seat, as my brother snickered in the back. And I turned my face to the window, watching my hometown blur into a smear of light and shadow, my silence a scream trapped in my chest. Her prophecy, "Never wear a uniform that matters," embedding itself like a shard of glass in my soul. And that night, in the room adorned with ribbons, that now felt like accusations, I made a decision in the absolute quiet of my devastation, packing a single sea bag with my few belongings, using the meager cash from my lifeguarding job to buy a one-way bus ticket south to San Diego, California, a city defined by the Pacific Ocean and the massive naval presence that hugged its coast. A place where no one knew I was the girl with no real ambition, the daughter built for a quiet, insignificant life. And as the greyhound descended from the mountain passes into the vast, sprawling promise of Southern California, I made a vow not of loud defiance, but of a silent, seismic transformation, a promise that one day, against every foundational belief she held, my mother would see me standing not just in a uniform that mattered, but in a uniform that commanded her son's salute, and she would finally, viscerally, comprehend the catastrophic error of mistaking my quiet determination for a lack of spine. San Diego was a shock of salt air, military buzz, and overwhelming scale, a city where the U.S. Navy was a living, breathing entity. And my new reality was a brutal lesson in anonymity and survival. My first home a bunk in a worn-out youth hostel in the Gaslamp Quarter, the loneliness a constant, gnawing companion louder than the street musicians below, my existence a grinding cycle of poverty, wage jobs. The graveyard shift cleaning offices in the glass towers of downtown. My world one of vacuum cleaner whines and empty cubicles, under the glow of exit signs. The brutal afternoon sun as a crew member on a tourist sport fishing boat out of Shelter Island, hauling anchors and cleaning fish for tips from sunburned vacationers. The soul, deadening work as a cashier at a massive big box store in National City, where the fluorescent lights and endless beep of the scanner seemed to mock any notion of a larger destiny. Each job a masterclass in being unseen. Each meager paycheck a tense negotiation between a carton of eggs and the next week's rent for my later, mold-smelling studio apartment in City Heights. There were nights when the hunger was a sharp, educational pain, and the sleeplessness was filled with the echoing tape of my mother's voice, and the corrosive doubt that maybe, in the grand scheme of America, she was right, that I was destined for the background, and I would cry those silent, desperate tears into a thin pillow, the emotional isolation so complete, I felt like a ghost drifting through a sun-drenched paradise, utterly shattered and unmoored. But within that profound brokenness, a core of granite began to form, a quiet, furious refusal to let her narrative be my biography. And I understood my revenge would be a citadel, built one invisible brick at a time, its blueprint drawn in the secret hours of the night. My sanctuary became the San Diego Central Library, a stunning architectural marvel that felt like a spaceship of hope, and within its soaring, quiet spaces, surrounded by the scent of new books and ambition, I began my real education, starting with GED prep books, then devouring texts on naval history, political science, and leadership, my fingers tracing the service records of women at the Naval Academy, while surviving on ramen and a desperate, growing belief in a different tide chart for my life. The path I charted was one of title, relentless resilience. I enrolled in online courses through a San Diego community college, studying on a secondhand laptop in the library's hushed corridors after my shifts. The screen a portal to a world of structure and rank I craved. Each past exam a silent salvo against her prophecy. Each completed credit a step closer to the sea. And when I finally earned my associate's degree with high honors, I took the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, scoring in a percentile that made the recruiter at the storefront office in Mira Mesa raise an eyebrow. And I enlisted in the United States Navy, not as an escape, but as a deliberate, targeted invasion into the very heart of the institution that represented the uniform she said I'd never meaningfully wear. Boot camp at Recruit Training Command, Great Lakes, Illinois, was a culture shock of Midwestern winter and manufactured stress. 8 weeks designed to strip away the civilian and forge a sailor. And in the relentless drills, the uniform inspections, the intense physical and mental pressure, I found not oppression, but a strange, clarifying language of discipline. And in my darkest moments on the grinder, my body pushed to its limit, I would hear my mother's voice, "Girls like you, not built for real pressure." And I would push harder, my silence becoming my shield, my obedience to the process my weapon. Graduating not as the top of my division, but as a sailor who had learned to channel every ounce of past pain into present focus. My first assignment, based on my test scores, was as a personnel specialist at Naval Base San Diego, an administrative role deep in the bureaucracy of the fleet, processing pay and records, a job many saw as a dead end. But I saw as a graduate course in the Navy's vast, regulatory bloodstream, and I performed it with flawless, relentless precision, volunteering for every additional duty, studying Navy regulations and officer program guides during my lunch breaks. My quiet diligence noticed by a seasoned chief petty officer who saw a spark of something more, and she became my mentor, guiding me to apply for the Seaman to Admiral 21 program, a highly competitive commissioning path. that would send me to college to become a naval officer. A long shot that became my obsession. For 3 more years, my life was a grueling trifecta of full-time Navy duty, college prerequisites at night, and a social life sacrificed on the altar of this single goal. My resilience hardening into tempered steel, my patience a deep ocean current. And when the acceptance letter to the STA 21 program arrived, I was ordered to the University of Washington, in Seattle, to complete a bachelor's degree in political science. A surreal shift from the structured world of the Navy to the fluid world of academia. But I wore my E5 rank like armor, studied with a veteran's discipline, and graduated with honors. My commissioning ceremony a small, profound affair where I took the oath as a naval officer, trading my enlisted uniform for the crisp khakis and gold bars of an ensign. A transformation that happened with no family in attendance. The weight of the new uniform a beautiful, heavy contradiction of everything I'd been told. My career as a surface warfare officer was a steep, demanding climb. From my first division officer tour on a guided missile destroyer homeported in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, learning to lead sailors, manage complex engineering systems, and stand watch on the bridge, navigating the vast Pacific, to later staff positions at Commander, Naval Surface Force in Coronado, California, my expertise in personnel and training policy growing, my reputation as a sharp, fair, and unflappable officer solidifying with each fitness report, each successful inspection, each sailor I mentored, my quiet authority earning me the respect of peers and superiors, my life slowly accumulating the substance of a purpose-built existence. A condo with a view of the San Diego Bay. A network of fellow officers, who were my chosen family. A sense of belonging to something monumental. The pivotal turn came when I was selected for the Navy's Federal Executive Fellowship, a program placing senior officers in think tanks, and I spent a year at the Rand Corporation in Santa Monica, researching national security strategy, my analytical mind flourishing in that environment. And upon my return to the fleet, I was promoted ahead of my peers and given command of a Navy recruiting district, an unusual but critical leadership role, overseeing hundreds of recruiters across several Western states, responsible for bringing the next generation into the service, a role that required diplomatic skill, managerial acumen, and a deep understanding of the Navy's message. And it was here, as a captain, that my world intersected with my past in a way I could have never orchestrated. A routine personnel file crossed my desk, a transfer request for a new recruiter to be assigned to my district's office in Boise, Idaho, and the name in the file was Petty Officer, 2nd Class Jacob, Jakey, Miller, my brother, his football prospects having long since faded into a modest, unremarkable enlistment, his record solid but uninspired, and attached was the standard form, listing his next of kin. Our parents' address still in Billings, Montana. I felt a profound, still calm. I approved the transfer. The revenge was in the normalcy of the bureaucratic action, in the absolute, legal authority of my signature on his orders. I did not call him. I did not call my parents. I let the machine of the Navy that I was now a commanding part of do its work. Months later, as part of my command's leadership tour, I traveled to the boys' recruiting station for a readiness inspection, arriving in a staff car with my aide, wearing the summer white uniform of a Navy captain, the 4 gold stripes on my shoulder boards gleaming, my command pin over my right breast. The station staff, including my brother, were lined up in their service dress blues for my arrival. As I entered, the station chief called the room to attention. "Captain on deck!" The snap of heels was sharp and unified. I took in the room, my eyes passing over my brother's face, which had drained of all color, his eyes wide with a shock so profound it looked like physical pain. His body rigid at attention, his own uniform, now a symbol of his subordinate position to mine. I gave him no special glance, no nod. I proceeded with the inspection, speaking calmly with recruiters, reviewing their goals, offering guidance with the steady authority I had earned over 16 years of service. After the formalities, I dismissed the staff to return to work, but asked Petty Officer Miller to remain for a moment in the office. When the door closed, leaving us alone, he stood, still at a modified attention, unable to meet my eyes. "Jake," I said, my voice calm, professional, the voice of a commanding officer, not a sister. "Your personnel file indicates solid performance. Keep it up. The Navy needs good recruiters." He finally looked at me, his face a mask of confused awe and dawning humiliation. "Maya, Captain. I didn't know." "That's quite all right, Petty Officer," I said, gathering my cover. "The Navy is a large institution. Carry on." I turned and left the office, my aide falling in step beside me. The silence between us filled with the deafening sound of a prophecy being irrevocably shattered. I knew, with absolute certainty, that he would call our parents the moment I left. He would describe the captain's uniform, the command, the sheer, unassailable authority I now wielded. I pictured my mother receiving that call, her world view, her foundational belief in my smallness and Jake's primacy, collapsing in real time. She would see me now, not in person, but in the most powerful way, through the stunned, subordinated eyes of her golden child, through the reality of the uniform and rank I wore that now commanded his respect and obedience. The emotional breakdown would be hers, private, profound, and absolute. My revenge was complete. It was calm, legal, and dignified beyond any confrontation. I had not just worn a uniform that mattered. I had become the very architecture of authority within the world she thought was only for men like my brother. I had rebuilt myself in the image of salt, steel, and silent perseverance. And in doing so, had proven that the deepest resilience is often forged in the quietest hearts, and that self-respect, earned through relentless tides of patience and effort, is the highest rank of all.